Hello and welcome to the third instalment in a set of 4 weekly videos made by Bethlem Museum of the Mind to support our virtual book club reading Robert Burton's 17th century magnum opus, The Anatomy of Melancholy. I'm the director of the museum and my name's Colin Gale. Behind me are 2 works of art by Elise Warrener-Paquette, which was featured in a temporary exhibition here at Bethlem in 2019, inspired by The Anatomy of Melancholy. These poignant works are titled Protecting the Heart and Eating the Heart Out, and they're dramatic and painful representations of the close link between physical and mental health and ill health that I spoke about in the last video in this series. If you saw it, you may remember that quotation, "The body is the dwelling place of the soul." That was certainly the experience of the artist, and it was a painful one at that. For our book club, we're not asking anyone to read the 1,000+ pages of The Anatomy of Melancholy in its original edition and in its entirety. Though, if anyone wants to take that challenge on during these days of coronavirus shutdown in which we're filming, they're perfectly free to do so. Instead, we've been recommending people obtain either the Stan's Cafe abridgment of 2013 or the Hesperus Press abridgment published in the same year, which is a little easier to get your hands on, especially in an e-reader version. I'll give page references to both editions whenever I can in these videos. In this third instalment, I'm going to introduce the second partition to The Anatomy of Melancholy, which is where Robert Burton discusses a wide range of possible remedies for the condition, following on from the first partition, which was devoted to an extensive range of possible causes. Please bear in mind that in discussing Burton's ideas, as we're doing here, we're not giving medical advice. Burton's medical knowledge, such as it is now 400 years out of date. However, alongside his medical advice lies a work of humanist wisdom, according to the scholar Michael O'Connell. You'll find this quotation in the Nicholas Robbins introduction. O'Connell speaks of The Anatomy of Melancholy as a work of humanist wisdom, a kind of commentary on human nature. And this is what makes it interesting and relevant to us in our age, faced with the challenges we're faced with today. The remedies proposed by Robert Burton for melancholy are, like its possible causes, too many for me to list here. He discusses the respective merits, if you can call them that, of intermittent fasting, bloodletting, placebos, also the merits of the Western tradition of memento mori, in which we're precisely invited to ask and answer the question, what's the worst that could happen? As well as the slightly more dubious merits of the use of alcohol and tobacco. A good night's sleep is recommended by him, and a warning given on page 59 of the Stan's Cafe edition and page 65 of the Robbins edition, that he who sleeps in the daytime, or is in suspense, fear, or in any way troubled, or goes to bed on a full stomach, may never hope for a quiet rest in the night. But alongside these interventions, Burton discusses the available options for what we might call social prescribing. One of these is reading. If it were so that I must be a prisoner, if I might have my wish, I would desire to have no other prison than that library. Here, on page 58 of Stan's Cafe and page 63 of Robbins, Burton is speaking particularly of the Bodleian Library at the University of Oxford. I would desire to have no other prison than that library, and to be chained together with so many good authors. I imagine that book club participants, especially those affected by a coronavirus shutdown, would be able to identify with that sentiment. Lock us into a library and we maybe will turn out just fine. Another of Burton's social prescription is the company of a good listener. On page 61 of Stan's Cafe and page 66 of Robbins, he writes that the best way for ease is to impart our misery to some friend, not to smother it up in our own breast. A friend's counsel is a charm. It assuages our care. Yet another prescription is on page 58 of Stan's Cafe and page 61 of Robin's. And while it is a social prescription, it also involves self-medicating. He writes, "Some men's whole delight is to take tobacco and drink all day long in a tavern or alehouse, to discourse, sing, jest, roar, talk cock and bull over a pot." The Stan's Cafe edition adds, but the Robin's edition omits, a note of caution. Though they be honest recreations in themselves, they are often abused. Later, on page 77 of Stan's Cafe and 69 of Robin's, we find the recommendation, the same recommendation, and the same caveat. "I do not find a more present remedy than a cup of wine or strong drink," there's the recommendation, "if it be soberly and opportunely used," there's the caveat. At a time of coronavirus lockdown, the opportunities for discoursing, singing, jesting, roaring, and talking cock-a-bull are limited to online meetings, which are never quite the same as face-to-face encounters. And solitary all-day drinking and smoking sessions are the kind of cures which could easily turn out to be worse than the disease. We've already given a health warning on Burton's speculations, and it's worth repeating that none of them can be safely treated as medical advice. Today, we should recognise that panic buying and solitary consumption of alcohol and cigarettes are part of the problem, not the solution. To be fair to Burton, he gives the same warning in the caveats he issues, "if soberly and opportunely used." Before we leave this partition and end this video, I thought it interesting to highlight one other remedy Burton recommends, which finds a place in the Stan's Cafe edition on page 78, but is omitted from the Robin's edition. And to gain a sense of how extraordinary what it is I'm about to read out is, we have to remember when it was written, at a time when contact between East and West was very limited. From the vantage point of 1621, Burton tells us that the Turks have a drink called coffer, for they use no wine, so named of a berry, as black as soot and as bitter, which they sip as warm as they can suffer. They spend much time in these coffer houses, which are somewhat like our alehouses and taverns, and there they sit, chatting and drinking to drive away the time, and to be merry together, because they find by experience that kind of drink, so used, helpeth the digestion. Now that we have been taught by Burton about the close relationship between physical and mental health, we know that anything that helps the digestion is likely to help our mental well-being. And I'm sure that there will be many watching this video who can swear by the vivifying effects of coffee, drunk as warm as can be suffered. Thanks for watching this video. Please remember to like and comment on it either via Facebook or YouTube, or else interact with the museum and other book club members on Twitter on the days to come on the museum's Twitter account. If you are reading the Anatomy of Melancholy along with these videos, now's the time for me to say that you have a week or so to read the third and final partition of the book, which can be found on pages 83 to 98 of the Stan's Cafe edition, and pages 73 to 93 of the Robin's edition. In a week's time, we'll upload the final video in this series. This last section of the Anatomy of Melancholy returns to the special problems of love and religious melancholy, and I look forward to discussing it with you. Until then, stay safe and well, and goodbye from us here at Bethlem Museum of the Mind.